Blood Brothers podcast, a Five Pillars production.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear brothers, sisters, friends, and the foes out there, and welcome to another episode of the Blood Brothers podcast with your host, Dilly Hussain. Before I introduce today's very dear guest of mine, I want to remind all the avid podcast listeners that you can find this show on all the major audio platforms, Spotify, Google, Apple, and all the rest. And of course, if you're tuning in via YouTube, don't forget to click subscribe, like this video, leave a comment, and of course, share away. Today's podcast guest is a dear brother and friend of mine. I know I've overused this term a lot with many guests, but I genuinely mean this. Brother Yusuf Patel, who is the founder of the Islamic educational program, SRE Islamic, is a dear friend of mine. He's someone whose counsel I take very seriously, someone who is an advisor in the line of work that I do and has been for many years. And he is someone who is a unique soldier of the Muslim community. But that's enough dirt on his face. I welcome him to the Blood Brothers podcast. Yusuf, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
How would you describe SRE Islamic?
So I think we're an organisation that developed as a result of a need that we found in the Muslim community. Lack of understanding around what is required and not required around SRE in schools, which is now relationship and sex education, and also really supporting parents to discuss these issues with their children. And sometimes these are uncomfortable discussions, but they need to be had. And I think we're trying to get across the importance of these discussions and how vital they are for the future generation of our children, their children and their children.
SRE Islamic was launched when?
In 2008.
2008, so it's been about 14 years.
Yeah, coming up to that. Towards the end of this year, it'll be 14 years, inshallah.
What made you initially launch SRE?
So I was a governor in a school, and we used to meet lots of other Muslim governors from different schools. And even at that stage, people were saying, look, this is statutory in schools, we can't do anything about it. And I thought that, I didn't believe that to be correct. So
what was statutory? Just standard
sex education, yeah. Even back then, there was a belief that it was all statutory. There was no leeway. There was nothing, no rights. It was just like science. We've got no control or no input as to how it's being taught, how it should be taught. So we did some research with some other governors, looked at the requirements legally, and then also looked at how we can even discuss this with our children and what we can do to try and raise much more awareness in schools. And actually that coincided with, in 2008, anybody who remembers back then, the Labour government who was in power all those years ago, they decided to make it a statutory subject at the end of 2008. So then we decided to do a report.
Was that under PSHE?
So it was
PSE.
so PSHE is all in state schools. PSHE has always been non-statutory, but it was always delivered under PSHE. But it was a subject that was going to be made statutory, and it's only as a result of some failings from the government. The election was called, and the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, mostly or in a major way, that was scuppered. Those plans were scuppered. But yeah, we've been supporting parents since 2008. Yeah.
Today's conversation between you and I, it's going to involve not necessarily me presenting to you specific answers to specific questions, but I am going to raise some topics and taboos that exist within our communities, bro. We'll get to RSE, we'll get to sex education, the LGBTQ, and we'll get to all of that. We will. I promise you we will. I want to first talk about just generally the approach many parents have when addressing certain topics, whether that is the monthly physiological change of females and the lack or absence of support that they get from their mothers, that it is something that's of sharm. It is not shameful, but it's something that you don't talk about because it's something seen as dirty, right? Or something that's inappropriate to talk about. So there's just too many Muslim girls who are still going into schools and are having a rude awakening when their body reacts for the first time in that way. There's also things pertaining to sex generally. How do babies come about, right? and a plethora of issues which, quite frankly, for decades now, because we are a community that have been in the UK, Muslim communities, we've been here for 40, 50 years, but let's just say last 30, 40 years, these are just topics which Muslim parents, for some reason or another, many find it difficult to even remotely raise and address, let alone their children finding the fortitude or the confidence to ask their parents. How do we address that?
Firstly, just ask you a question. Why do you think parents find it difficult? And that's not just Muslim parents, but parents across the board. Why do you think they find it difficult? When I ask parents, they give me lots of reasons. What do you think the top reason is?
I think, and again, I'm not being anti-white or racist. I think white folk have a very crude and candid way of explaining things. Whether they want to use the kind of oven or the oven example or the but they're quite men and women get jiggy and they have children. That's in this day and age, they don't tend to shy away from just telling their children that. Bro, if they're changing their genders at school at the age of 4, 5, 6, they're not going to shy away from explaining how babies are born. But if you're asking me about Muslim parents, I would have never asked my parents or my brothers and sisters, bro. Never. I found out all those things in a year 7 or 8 science class, right? I think there's a level of misappropriated haya. I know that sounds crazy, but you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So there's a level of shyness and modesty that you don't talk about these things. Some Muslims, depending on where they are from the Muslim world, are far more shadeed than others, right? So South Asians, I find, are very taboo centric when it comes to these kind of things. Because
more than Arabs,
100 and way more than West Africans. Yeah. So Sharam, misappropriated or misplaced haya, lack of confidence in how to appropriately answer it, to look in your child's eye and talk about something like sexual intimacy or sexual intercourse or menstruation. I think that's what my answers would be. It's just awkward.
And absolutely, I think in terms of as a natural course of life, our frames of reference come back to, like, when raising our own children, most of the time our frames of reference go back to our parents. So we generally fall back when we're raising our children. We fall back on, how did my parents do it? And that's what we do generally. Now, there may be some exceptions, but most of the time, that's what we fall back on. And our parents did raise us quite well, so that serves us quite well generally. But in relation to this topic, there's a huge amount of taboo to discuss this. It's like, we can't discuss this. So I say to parents, look, the reality is, the idea of sex is all around your children, everywhere they go, in society, on TV, in schools, everywhere. But the only place we choose not to discuss this is in the home, which is like the safe space, a place where we can potentially discuss it from our Islamic perspective. And that's a real shame. And so the reality is, if our children don't go to us, who are they going to? They're getting it from somewhere. They're getting some information from somewhere. What information are they getting it from our perspective? No, they're getting it from Google. They're getting it from pornography. They're getting it from all sorts of influences. But there also is, and I think we need to also talk about this, is that within our South Asian culture, that the cultural attitudes, a lot of it stems from a very colonialist approach to sex. Yeah?
This is true.
Because the Victorian understanding of sex and sexuality was all very much, sex is taboo, sex should not be spoken about, it's a biological functional way, and that all of these ideas and values really are opposed to the very values and ideas that are within Islam. Yeah, the Prophet used to answer questions. He said, "Blessed are the women of Medina." When he went to Medina, the women of Medina used to come to him and ask him lots of questions about even what is allowed or not allowed sexually in the bedroom. And the Prophet would answer those questions for them, because these were in relation to, how do I live my life as a Muslim? Yeah,
I get that, but that was the exceptional example of the Prophet ﷺ. Our parents may not feel comfortable doing that, because today we're talking about sex, tomorrow will be positions, the next day will be something else that's crazy, and they've just simply are not equipped to deal with those things, because they couldn't do it with their mothers and fathers, and they couldn't do it with their mothers and fathers. So what is the first stage?
I think that's a really important point. But I think the question is not, I think sometimes when parents think we need to discuss, or we need to answer, or we need to be the first port of call for our children around sex, is always understood within a very biological perspective. You know, this idea of the birds and the bees. And I sometimes hear Muslims speaking about, we need to have a conversation with our children about birds and the bees. That is rubbish, you know. Having a conversation where you never discuss issues with your children, and your child turns 13 or 14, and you say, let's go on a journey, or let's go on a ride, and then you just download all the information about sex. That doesn't work. Yeah, that's not right. The issue is that the most important conversations you can have around sexual issues in a society which is hypersexualized is around the values perspectives around sex. That's more important than the actual issues around functionality. Yeah. So what are the values which we believe in, which underpin our understanding of relationships between men and women? That's the key point that sometimes parents need to look at as almost an operating context behind those discussions. And actually parents think, I need to discuss about the biology of sex. No, as long as we've almost raised an understanding of what are the norms within our Islamic values, what are the norms, yeah, and how does society fit into those norms. The reality is, in the society in which we live, the idea of values around sex are anything goes, really. There are very few laws which regulate how human beings should engage in sexual conduct. It's whatever you want to do, as long as as long as it's not with children, as long as it's consensual, whatever you want. Yeah. So we are living in a context where the values in society are completely at odds with our values. Okay. And so that is the starting point, not the discussion around sexual relationships.
Okay, so what do we do if you happen to be a Muslim parent who don't have that value-based understanding of the Islamic framework?
So if you're not living Islam,
if you're not living Islam,
that's a really important point, because it's like there's a saying I came across a while ago, and it exemplifies this very message. You can't give what you don't have.
Fine, but you have Muslims who fear Allah, believe in Allah and His Messenger on the final day. They may not be practicing Muslims or understand Islam that deeply to have that value-based explanation to their children, where you talk about the more kind of central framework of how men and women engage with one another in public and private, and what kind of relationships Islam allows and doesn't allow.
And that's the important point, because we're not saying, and I think one thing is we've got to steer away from this understanding that parents need to be perfect. Yeah, because there's a real pressure, and parents feel, no, I'm not perfect. How can I talk to my children about these issues? That's not the case. You don't have to be perfect. Nobody's perfect. None of us are perfect in any aspect of our lives. Yeah, but the issue is that we've got to say is that sometimes having children is it's almost the means by which you change your perspective on life. You think about the first time you held your child, and you thought, subhanAllah, this is mind-blowing, I'm now responsible for this young human, I never thought that love, that connection I'd have with this child would ever exist. You have that. It's within the fitrah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created within us. It's that connection that Allah created within a parent and a child. But what we're saying is that sometimes we just think, we've got children, we've got responsibility, maybe let's use this new event in life at whatever point in our child's life to try and change ourselves so that we become the best role models for our children. Because the reality is that unless we live our values, our children, what is the incentive for them to live those values if we don't live them in real life? So for example, most children don't care what you say, but rather they care what you do. They're modeling, the modeling of our behavior, is what they follow. So if there's a disconnect between what we say and what we do, then normally we'll follow what we do. So if we say pray 5 times a day, but we don't pray 5 times a day, they'll see that and say, okay, it's not necessary that we pray 5 times a day. If we don't, and the first time they see the relationship between their mother and father as being an example of a marital relationship, is they look and see, how does my father and mother, they connect with each other? How do they interact? And they use that as a blueprint for their own future aspirations and expectations in marriage in the future. So I think, first of all, we need to think about, not thinking that we need to be perfect, but what can we do to ensure we are the best role models for our children moving forward? And at the moment, the reality is that if a lot of us had report cards for our interaction with our children and raising children, we'd probably be failing. Yeah, but that doesn't mean that we can't do better. The opportunity to do better exists at every point in our relationship with our children. It just means that we have to have the motivation to want to be better with our children. And I think we're here to try and say, what can we do to try and give you the tools and resources and the frameworks to be able to make those conversations and that interaction with our children easier and better.
So where is that toolkit? Drop us the website, SRE Islamic.
So we've got sreislamic.org, which was really focused around SRE in schools. But now we've got a new initiative called Parental Guidance, which is more focused around how do we have these discussions with our children. Yeah. So parentalguidance.support. And we're going to try and provide lots and lots of resources for parents to be able to do that. And we also recognise, we're not idealists, and we don't expect the community to all fall behind that. The reality is, most of the time when I get calls from parents around advice to do with their children, it's at the point of crisis. My son, like over the last year, I've had so many calls. My son says he is gay. My daughter says she's a boy. She wants to be a boy. My
Real
daughter
talk. No
longer wants to be Muslim.
No. Yo. Are you actually getting those phone calls?
Yeah, absolutely.
Muslim parents saying their kids.
And I speak to imams, and they say I'm getting those calls as well. I'm getting those calls. I met imam of a major masjid just the other day, and we were talking, and I said, look, the reality is parents don't know that we're almost sleepwalking into a crisis in our community.
Can I ask you a genuine question, bro? Look. Oh my God. If your bacha are going into school and Imran wants to come back identifying as shagufta, but surely something's happening at home for him to think that that's okay. It can't just be what he's being indoctrinated at or being taught at school. Surely there must be something happening at home.
Think about children. Children, when they're growing up, they're still developing an identity about who they are.
Very impressionable.
Yeah, very impressionable. Now the issue is that this, if it was the case that this idea of changing gender or changing sex or whatever you want to term it was an issue of a real issue within a real issue within a community, within any society, then you would have seen this happening 20 years ago. But it wasn't. This is a phenomenon that is literally very new, about over the last 5 or 6 years. Yeah, and in America, where all of this started, now people have pointed to what they call peer contagion. One girl says, "I want to be a boy," and then all the girls in her classroom say, "Yeah, I want to be a boy as well." The reality is that why is it that the majority of children who want to change from one gender to another is girl to boy? Why is it that there's not the same number of boys to girls that want to change? There's like a whole list of boys who want to change to girls.
Why is that?
What is it about a society that is putting pressure upon girls that they want to almost say, I want that pressure to be taken off of me? Yeah, society puts a huge amount of pressure upon girls to be perfect, to look perfect, to behave in a particular way, all of these examples of influencers who are female, celebrities who are female, give the impression that they are perfect.
No, they're mullet.
Yeah? Look at, for example, all these influencers. For 1 minute of the day, they're on social media and they're on a beach. Look how perfect my life is. Yeah, my life is. I've got a relationship. I've got a life. I don't have to work. I've got it made. For the rest of that day, they are depressed out of their head. Yeah, because the reality is that their life isn't as perfect as they try and portray, because they're using their online persona to market who they are. Yeah, making money off people, and so they have to show themselves to be the perfect person. And all these girls are looking at that and saying, "Oh, how come my life isn't like that?" The pressure upon girls is immense, and a lot of girls say, "Look, I don't want to live like that." I spoke to one parent whose daughter wanted to be a boy, and when we drilled down into the reason, it was none other than the fact that the boys in that household, very culturally Pakistani household, and it could be Gujarati, it could be Bengali, Asian household, the boys didn't lift a finger. The boys got away with everything. They would have their food made. They would not even lift their plate from the table to the sink. And all that girl, she had to do everything. She said, "Why is it this is not fair? Why is it that I have to do everything? My brothers don't have to do anything?" So she thought that by being a boy, that would then change the dynamic. So then she would be able to do nothing. She'll be able to sit back and do nothing.
Okay.
And sometimes it's a cry for help.
Okay.
Sometimes it's a distortion of a real trauma that a child has.
Okay.
Yeah. And a lot of the times, it's as a result of the fact a child does not. All of the issues that we face with our children, I believe, majority of them are as a result of a child not believing that they're loved. And you may think, what do you mean? How can a child not believe that they're loved? Yeah, all parents love their children. I remember having a discussion with my daughter. And she said, "Look, some parents don't love love their children." I said, "Look, most do. Okay, there's exceptional situations. Most parents know that they love their children. But when I speak to parents en masse, I say, how many of you love your children? Everybody puts their hands up. I say, how many of you believe when you ask your children, are you loved? How many of them would say, I'm loved? I'm 100% sure my parents loved me. Because sometimes sometimes believing that you love your children and communicating that in a way that your children understand that are two different things.
I would even say Muslims who decide to leave Islam in a very public and vocal way, it roots down to mommy daddy issues.
It does, yeah. It does, absolutely. Sometimes someone said, and this is really exemplifies that. Yeah, sometimes a child who comes and says, "Look, I don't believe in God," rather than starting to discuss with them, let's talk about the arguments about God and stuff like that. They just need a hug. They just need to show that they're loved and validated. Yeah, it's something more primal, something more basic that's lacking in their lives. When I speak to parents, I spoke to a parent during the lockdown. He said, "Look, my son said he's gay." I said, the first question I asked him was, "Tell me about your relationship with your son." Yeah, and he said, "Look, for a long time, I left the house when they were asleep, and I came back, they were still asleep. I really haven't got a good relationship with my son." Yeah, and I said, "Look, the reality is a lot of the times when children misbehave or adopt radical shifts in their life, adopting trends, it's not as a result of something that is authentically something that they want to be,
or with conviction.
No, there's no conviction, but it's just almost a cry for help. It's a rebellion. It's almost, I'm looking for an identity that I can't find." Yeah, and the LGBT community provides almost a ready-made community. Come and be part of us. It's cool. It's exciting. It's like everybody. It's 20 years ago, that lifestyle was seen to be, it's not very exciting. I don't want to do that. Now it's like there's a disproportionate representation,
of course there is,
of LGBT characters in programs, and none of them are the villains. None of them are bad people. Never. They're all really nice people.
Yeah,
they're the best people.
Yeah.
And so people want to be like them.
Yeah. We'll get to the rainbow lobby very shortly at some point in the podcast. I guess I want to push back and perhaps play a bit of a devil's advocate here.
Yeah.
A non-Muslim liberal who's pro-LGBTQ would say, well, hold on, Yusuf, Dilly. Sounds like a lot of insecurities you guys have. Yeah. You guys live in a secular non-Muslim country, right? What's wrong with the children being taught that they live in a society, they live in a country where there's going to be family setups that have two dads, two mums, a dad and someone who identifies as a guitar, or a mum and someone who identifies as a fridge. What's it to you? This is a society, this is a country which your children are being raised in. What's your problem?
Yeah, I think there's a difference between children being taught that we live in a society where people have different value systems, people believe in different things. But the problem is, a lot of the times in schools, it's not discussed in that factual way. Yeah, that boy has two fathers. It's not discussed in that factual way. Now, take into account that he doesn't really have two fathers in the sense of they're not really his two fathers. They're just two people who've had a relationship, who've adopted that child, or they're not both biologically related to that child. Take that all out of the equation.
You're saying it's not being taught more from an impartial.
It's taught in a very imposing way, values imposing way. Like, for example, it's almost, children are being told, when I speak to parents, children are being told, wouldn't you like to have two dads? Would you like to have two mums? Isn't that great? Yeah. Or a girl is being told, look, if you want to be a boy, there's nothing wrong with that. It's really good.
Sure.
Be your true self. Yeah, you do you. I speak to my wife all the time.
You do you.
And this phrase, I really hate it. You do you. What does that mean?
They've been doing themselves for too long. That's why it's resulted in this.
What does you do you mean? Yeah, it's hard. You be your true self.
Yeah.
And even this idea of be the best version of yourself. Yeah, I know a lot of Muslims use that. I hate these terms. These terms are very much. They very much come from a very liberal perspective that says to people that what we believe in values are universal. Yeah, and they're not universal. They're not neutral or universal.
They're definitely not neutral.
They come from a very specific belief about life, a very distinct worldview that we don't believe in. But what we say to schools, and I spoke to a head teacher who were having problems. I said, look, as long as you discuss these issues in a very factual way, but also say there are different views around this in society. Some people believe these relationships are morally acceptable, and some people don't. Legally, a man can marry a man and a woman can marry a woman. That's a legal, factual perspective. But if you go beyond that and try, and some teachers, unfortunately, they bring their own values into the classroom in a way in which they think, I'm being inclusive. No, you're being very exclusive.
Absolutely.
You're actually imposing your value system upon children who don't believe in those values.
But that's because these children are coming from families and households where these views are not being espoused at all, even as a difference of opinion, even as a point of diversity. Meaning a liberal teacher who's non-Muslim or could even be Muslim, is pro-LGBTQ, thinks they're being inclusive by teaching their children this in a completely partial way. Yeah. But they would argue, and I've had some teachers argue this as well. Well, hold on, we're dealing with 80-90% children from Muslim households who believe that homosexuals should be thrown off buildings, quite frankly. So I think we have a duty here to tell them that it's okay to have two dads, or it's okay to have two mums, or it's okay to do X, Y, and Z, because we are dealing with children who are coming from households that believe homosexual acts are a sin, and the people who first committed it were punished severely by God. So we have a duty now to tell them that, by the way, guys, if this is what you're being taught in your mosques and your madrasas, which isn't even happening, by the way, which isn't even happening, because I remember Piers Morgan tried to say that to me, because that's not happening. But
the thing is, they have, these.
No, but they'd argue that.
First of all, liberals, just to talk about that, but liberals have a very strange perspective about what happens in our mosques and our communities.
100%.
They presume to know what's happening there, because they're the font of all wisdom.
Of course.
A white liberal, they believe their understanding of life is the perfect way of life. They are supremacists. They believe that their way of life is far superior to any other way of life. They believe that we are uncivilized, as all the whole Ukraine discussion has proved. They believe we're uncivilized. They believe that we need to be civilized, and we only become civilized once we adopt their value system and their values perspectives. But the problem is that what we say is that in schools, as in society, there are supposed to be 9 protected characteristics. One of those is
the Equalities Act.
Equalities Act. One of those is sexual orientation. And another one is faith and belief.
How do you grapple with those 2 protected identities in the case of Birmingham? When
they haven't managed. The reality is, and most people say, when I speak to people from other communities like Christians as well, they will say, and rightly, there's plenty of evidence for that although the law provides an equal footing for all those protected characteristics, the reality is, when they're applied, there's a hierarchy. There's a real hierarchy. I was speaking to some parents who said, look, we've got 50% of Muslim children in that school. There's one family that comes from an LGBT background, and because that one family, so much provisions and that's right. And then so the parents. So when the parents said to the school, look, we understand that that obviously you've got to protect that child from discrimination. Anything, there's nothing happening to that child that needs to be dealt with anyway. But the reality is that if parents are saying that this discussion is too soon, beyond the factual discussion, if you're going beyond that just to accommodate one family, then where is the equality there? Why is it that you're taking that one perspective above our perspectives? And then when it came to that discussion, she said, no, it's not a numbers game. So conveniently, when they were doing a survey, it's a numbers game because surveys are about numbers.
Of course.
But when it comes to that argument, it's not a numbers game. The reality is that we're not working on an evil playing field, where the rules are equally applied to everybody. The rules are stacked against us, and we've got to push back against that. Now, the only way that these equalities can be adjudicated, where in practical life, when our rights have been taken away, is going to be in a court of law. That's the only place. And even then, we're skeptical about whether a court will actually be fair when it comes to brown people against white people, because we know very clearly the judiciary is not colorblind. They don't really adjudicate fairly.
Bro, there's a two-tier justice system.
There is,
I mean,
absolutely.
we don't have to faff about and beat around the bush, my brother, man.
So what I'm saying is that although there's an equality in the way this act should be applied, in reality it's not. And the only way it's going to be resolved is in the court. But the court is not really going to be the place where we get... we actually need white Christians to push this case, and to be the face of that sort of a case, not really brown Muslims.
Okay,
yeah?
I'm gonna get to the alliances aspect of it. Look, I know that someone's gonna complain to Impress about this podcast, just like they complained about my vlog outside the cave of Lut alayhi salam.
Yeah.
And we had to give our $2 grant back to them, right? So I'm gonna choose my words very carefully. Why have you ever taken time, Yusuf, to see the chronology of this movement and this lobby and how they became as powerful and influential as they are now? Have you ever spent time to...
You know, one thing I want to say before I go into that is that, this lobby isn't as powerful as we maybe think they are.
Then how are they made it to all the mainstream
Yeah.
outlets, all the mainstream shops? How have they got everyone donning the rainbow flag?
Yes.
How have they got Netflix,
Because,
all the programs?
There's
How?
a number of issues here. One is that the idea of equality, sexual equality, chimes very much with the liberal perspective in which this society is founded. The only thing that was ever holding this society back,
as in the concept of utilitarianism, to maximize your...
The only thing that was holding this society back was the Christian values, those values that were saying, no, this is morally unacceptable. Yeah. Now, to all intents and purposes, those Christian values don't exist anymore. Not even the Tory party, which was once founded upon an idea of family values, believes in those anymore.
100%.
Yeah? So there's nothing stopping society from moving forward and recognizing those values.
Then why would you want the Christians to be the front face of this then?
I'm saying that there are a minority of Christians who believe in these values.
Yeah, but them man have got female vicars and stuff, bro. They've got gay vicars and gay fathers.
We need to recognise, even, for example, look at the Church of England, for example, The Church of England, there is like a big schism within the Church of England. There are the people who are, the majority actually of the Church of England, who believe in being progressive, being wishy-washy, that we don't want to moralise about things like who people sleep with. Rather, we want to talk about things like food banks, and we want to talk about things which are acceptable. And then on the other wing of the Church of England, there are the evangelicals, who are a very vocal minority within the church, who believe that we still got to believe in that marriage is an important part of God's teachings, and that we got to still do everything to protect that. We got to protect children in schools, and so there is a schism there. Now, the reality is I say that the majority of the time, Muslims are on their own in this fight, because the number of Christians who believe in our perspective on this is minor. Even Archbishop of Canterbury won't care less what we believe in. Similarly, even within the Catholic Church, which was generally our ally in this fight, now the Catholic Church is moving forward. Even the Pope is saying things which, like, how can you believe that anymore? How can you believe? Why are you becoming so liberal in relation to issues around sexuality? So the issues the reality is we are on our own on some of these arguments, but there are still alliances that can be had with some certain sections of different communities who we can still work with.
Are all children being targeted, or are Muslim children specifically being targeted, do you think?
I think it's not.
Okay, let me rephrase it.
It's not a coincidence.
Okay,
in certain areas where there's large proportions of Muslim children,
they're rolling out these.
They're pushing this much more. Pushing this out much more to children, because look, the reality is that there's a belief that most people have accepted publicly these different lifestyles and these different ways of living. And the only people who are still holding out are the Muslims. Now, me and you, they can't change us. We can't teach an old dog new tricks.
Never me.
but
Never me.
But I don't know what that means. But the issue is that
from
the
Scarface.
children, children. If you change children, you change the future generations. Yeah. And you change the way, like for example, about 15 years ago, there was a poll that was done around people believing in homosexuality in the Muslim community. Or what is your view? The question was, what is your view on homosexuality? Most people said it's a sin. Like 99.9% said it was a sin. If you did that poll now, it would be much closer to like 60% saying it.
Don't
if you did
say
it
that,
amongst
man.
young Muslims.
Don't say
yeah,
that. Don't.
I speak to maktab teachers who tell me when they speak about this in the class, in the maktab class, there's girls, hijabi girls, who say, no, don't say that, don't be homophobic. Yeah, we believe that everybody has these rights. Love is love. All of these slogans.
Yusuf, don't give me scare stories, man. Are you
know,
being serious?
I'm serious. The reality is this.
In
what's happening.
maktabs, there's young girls and possibly even boys who get up and question their teachers.
Mostly girls. Yeah, don't be homophobic. This is unacceptable. We need to believe in equality. Islam believes in equality. You know, the issue is that, and this has only come about because of the fact that as a community we've stopped speaking about this because there's a fear around speaking about this. So we've created a vacuum that's allowed the LGBT lobby to indoctrinate young Muslims around their slogans.
So what do you want us to do now? Then what do you want parents to do, bro?
Have these conversations with children.
When? How? When? The timing? When? At what age?
Yeah. The thing is now, the reality of saying age, is to a certain extent an arbitrary issue now because children are starting to be exposed to these ideas much earlier. In lots of RSE, in lots of places in RSE, in schools, even though it's not a required element of the RSE curriculum in primary schools, the RHE, the relationship education curriculum, lots of schools will be talking about two dads and two mums, and even in nursery and reception they'll have board books. Tango makes three, about two penguins who raise an egg, or about a child who decides to dress as a girl. So these conversations are being normalized now. So I think the time when we say we can hold off these conversations till they're 10 or 11, that's out of the window. We need to start having conversations much earlier. But I think what's really important is that we shouldn't start conversations about. I think one of the things that parents shouldn't do is start conversations at the point of we don't believe this or a negative issue. We just start by saying what we do believe. Yeah, what we believe is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created a male and a female. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created a male and a female to raise a family, to love each other, to raise a family like your mother and father love each other. Start by building positive values in children before saying, no, we don't believe in what they believe. Yeah, because that's not as effective. We need to start talking about our own values. But also we do need to start changing the terminology we use. Yeah. So in the Muslim community, we always say that person is gay, that person is lesbian. Now
Gandu.
But what is, so for example, if you say that person is gay, or if you say that person has same-sex feelings or has feelings towards the opposite gender, same gender, sorry. Yeah. Now, what is the difference between the two? In the first one, where you're saying that person is gay, you're almost trying to build. You're trying to say that is a part of who that person is. Yeah, that's a reality of who they are. But the second one, you're saying that's a feeling. Who you are can't change. But a feeling can.
Are we going into that bit where we're not using sexualization as an identity? Is that what you're trying to say?
Well, these are identities. We need to acknowledge their identities. Yeah, but they're made up identities. Yeah, that people have. That you know, across the history of Western civilization, these convenient labels have been used to understand sexuality in a way which does not conform to an organic understanding of human behavior.
And are you saying that's not normative in our tradition?
No. For example, why is there a man who is attracted to another man? That's a gay man. Mm-hmm. A man who's attracted to a blonde woman. What's the term for that person?
There's nothing for that term.
What's the term for the person? A man who's attracted to a black woman. A white man who's attracted to a black woman.
No, there's not there.
Why is that? Why is a certain label...
Thirsty?
Why is a certain label being used to define the sexual relationship between two people, but not other two people?
As in to define literally that person as gay, but there's nothing to define.
These are arbitrary labels. Yeah, there's about 150 different.
So what's the purpose of it then? What's the purpose of moving away from that in terms of language?
Yes.
This person's gay, she's lesbian.
Okay, so let's look at it from the practical perspective. One is, imagine a young Muslim,
Yeah.
a young Muslim man, yeah, young boy, yeah,
Yeah.
he starts to have feelings for another boy, yeah, and somebody says, "Oh, you're gay." Now that almost concretizes, yeah. This is what if Salman Butt's watching, he loves that term. Yeah, and actually, I'm really sad that I'm really not happy that I'm using that term.
Yeah.
Okay,
on this podcast as well, you did it.
Sorry. So it basically it solidifies. It solidifies something which is more liquid. Like, for example, if you say to somebody that person is gay, then that almost, we're born like that. That's who I am. If you said you have a feeling can change.
100%.
Yeah? A feeling doesn't have to be acted upon. The feeling does not hold you hostage to a particular action. Yeah. So we need to try change the terminology we use, because it has an impact, a real life impact on the way we understand this whole phenomenon. Yeah. So we say to children, okay, someone says, look, I have an attraction for another boy. Don't say, oh, why are you gay? Yeah. No, don't use those terms. Even don't use those terms in any way, sense, or shape, because an Islamic understanding of human behavior is that we all have feelings, yeah,
and
that lead to desires,
yes,
that could potentially lead to action, yeah. But that action is not inevitable. The action is behavior that is purposeful, that is a choice, yeah. And so what that does is that says to a person, this is not who you are, this is a feeling you've got. That feeling can be temporary. There's thousands of Muslims who had feelings for, say we have SSA, same-sex attraction. Now, we don't act upon those feelings because we believe it's prohibited. It's a sin against Allah, and this is our jihad. We're fighting it. Some of them marry. Some of them say, no, I don't even have any sexual feeling for a woman, so I will not marry that woman.
I'm gonna be serious. I'm gonna be real with you, bro. There's someone from the area, from my hood, who's like that, and I spoke to the brother, and he said, yeah. He goes, look, you know, if I've ever acted upon it, it's been out of weakness, and I've repented for it.
Yes.
But I'm battling with myself.
And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward that person and give them that strength. And that's what, as a community, we need to do much more of, yeah? The reality is...
What do we do about the one who advocates from the rooftops and says it's all legit?
Okay, look, there's two things here. That's a good point. Two points is, imagine there's a Muslim who struggles with his desires and acts upon it, but feels really upset about that and uneasy about that and hates that, and actually makes tawbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and says, I'm never going to do that again, but falls into that sin continuously.
There's no difference between that person and a drug addict or a gambler or that, and is it that they repent to Allah?
And that person, the doors of tawbah are always open to that person. Yeah?
And that person is Muslim.
Absolutely.
And we have a duty to them.
Absolutely. And we need to change the way we try and support those people, because everybody sins, everybody, and the reality, the tawbah is a revolutionary concept, and it's such a positive concept that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, open the doors of tawbah, the doors of repentance, the doors of forgiveness are open to everybody, yeah, as long as you keep repenting, because you know that repentance stops the normalization process. It's a hugely important psychological impact. When I look at tawbah, I think this is so mind-blowing that we don't appreciate its true value. But the one, for example, who says, I have this desire and I'm going to try and ensure that I twist the text to meet my desires, yeah, that person no longer going to do tawbah, because they don't see anything wrong with that action. Yeah, they say, look, there's the space for me in the Muslim community, even if I believe that being gay or being lesbian is acceptable. And we said, no, that person is in a real difficult situation, because that person has pitted themselves against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is the only one who can define for us what is good and bad, and they put themselves in a position where they say, no, I can define for myself what is good and bad. And so if that person truly believes that in legitimizing something which Allah has forbidden, yeah, they're making halal what Allah has made haram, like concretely Allah has made something forbidden, then that person is although we don't make takfir upon individuals, that's not our place, but they are on the boundaries of Islam. Their Islam is in question. Yeah, and so we say to people, what we should do is say, it's better if a person, even if that person falls into continuous sin, yeah, but recognizes it's a sin, that person is far, far better in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than the one who legitimizes that sin and says there's nothing wrong with what I'm doing. And there's a new group of activists who are saying that. And I think the reality is, for them, the desire has overtaken them to such an extent that they're willing to entertain reformism and deformist readings of the Quran. So they say Lut alayhi salam, it is contested. The tafsir of that is contested.
And it's to do with rape and robbery.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's to do with in hospitality, and it's to do with coercion, not consent.
Yeah, a bit of a stretch, innit?
So I think the problem is that what we've got to do is say that, and those people, they don't really deserve our pity, our help, our support. We should not do anything to support their cause. But for the one who's struggling, we should really say that the ummah is here for you, our community is here for you. You are still part of the community, even if you're falling into that sin. Yeah, the masjid is available to you. Come, and you're still part of our community. And inshallah, just like there was a man at the time of Prophet who used to continue to drink, yeah, and he would drink and drink, and he thought that. And even then, he would come to the Prophet. He would be lashed because he would be drinking. And the Sahaba would say, let's curse him. And Prophet said, no, do not curse him. He loves Allah and His Messenger. Yeah. And so that person was allowed to remain within the community. Obviously, he was punished if he drank in public or if he did an act which publicly contravened the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But to all intents and purposes, he was part of the community still, yeah. Because the doors of Tawbah were already open, and he didn't say, "No, what I'm doing is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with this."
I want to touch upon 4 topics. I don't want quick fire answers from you, but they kind of tie in with everything that we've been speaking about. So if I'm correct, bro, from what I've understood, the work that you're involved in, SRE Islamic, what you've been doing since 2008, as legislations have been changing, what I've gathered from today's conversation is that what you're kind of pushing for, or what you're encouraging or telling Muslim parents, is more of a value-based tarbiyah at home.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
So not going bang straight in, gayism is haram or being this is haram, but more so a more kind of a positive approach, explaining, using your own marriage as a demonstration of how a marriage should be.
But also saying to children, how do our children get the message from us that there's certain questions they can ask us and certain questions they can never ask us? Yeah. They get that from the way we respond to certain questions.
Yeah, when something comes on TV,
our body language, they ask a question and we look. Oh, I don't ask my father that question. Yeah.
Basically,
we need to be much more open than that and say, look, ask me anything. Come to me and ask me anything. Yeah. You come to me if you've got any question. Ask me that. I remember once after an event, one father came up to me and said, look, my son came to me and said to me, how is a baby born? And I said, don't ask me this question. It's not appropriate. And firstly, I from that question that he asked you, I can surmise that your relationship with your son is very strong. And he said, yeah, absolutely. We do everything together. We're the best of friends. How did you know? I said, look, he would only ask you that question if he had a good relationship with you. The relationship is a prerequisite for that comfort in coming to you and asking questions. Meaning
the child had the confidence and the fortitude to ask his dad, so therefore he must have a good relationship.
Absolutely. But I said to him,
what did you say to him about his response?
I said to him, why did you say that you couldn't answer that question? And he said, I thought that we're not allowed to answer those questions. I said, you are, absolutely. Yeah. These are questions which are about your children's life as a Muslim. Yeah. If somebody couches that answer in a way which says that relationships are okay as long as you're consenting, as long as you're both ready, it's absolutely fine, and then you can have a baby together, then that's wrong. That is somebody else really molding the values of your child. You have the ability to answer that question in line with our approach. You just say to him, look, go back to him and say, look, the way I answered that question was wrong. I really apologize. my parents never talked to me about this when I was growing up, so I feel discomfort at that. Yeah, and I still feel that I'm very. It's a very difficult question for me to answer, but let's find out together. Let's answer this question together. Yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Mashallah, you have children.
Yes.
And your oldest boy, who I met, mashallah, top lad. Would you not feel any discomfort or awkwardness if nephew came and asked you some of these things?
Well, the thing is, the reality is, and I would say,
do they know what their dad does?
Yeah.
Have they asked you about your work?
Well, my son's been to some of when I do like seminar, workshops with children and parents. My son's come.
And has he asked you questions about them?
Yeah. But the issue is, the thing is, and I think it's easier for me because that's the context in which I operate. But the thing is, the reality is that even if you feel discomfort, that's fine. That's not the problem. Yeah, you can feel discomfort, and that's perfectly natural. Yeah, given the fact that in our community these things are still taboo. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember when I do events at masjids, and it's about SRE. Sometimes the announcements, either they'll mumble the word sex or they won't even mention it. Yeah, because they're still like, no, we can't mention that. Yeah, or the elders will be unhappy if we mention this word.
You know how he said, the SEX word is like a hot one, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's always been hot.
Yeah. Yes. But the thing is, as I said, look, the issue is that our children should. The bottom line is, if our children don't come to us, who are they going to? Where are they getting their answers from? And how are these shaping their understanding about their future relationships? The reality is, a lot of Muslim youth are growing up, and their understanding about future sexual relationships is as a result of pornography. Yeah, the pornography is actually shaping the way they understand their future relationship, and pornography gives a very distorted view about sexual relationships.
Intimacy and all
it's
them kind of
almost
things,
as if it's very functional. It's not relational.
Animalistic.
It's very animalistic. And I sometimes speak to people where they say, my children grown up, they went to like a Muslim marriage event. And they were going around speaking to different people, and the young men were asking them, "Can you send us a picture? Yeah, or can you give us a pair of your knickers? Yeah." And these are
Yusuf, come on, man. You're not being serious, bro.
Are you saying that this
what, grown men
Yeah.
were going into Muslim link up, like marital link up, the matrimonial link up events, and they're asking sisters them kind of things.
Yeah, because the reality is, if your only understanding about sexual relationship is from pornography, then these sort of things are quite normal, isn't it? In general culture, people send certain pics, people send naked selfies, whole thing. This is something that happens.
Sexting, them kind of pics, the rhyming pics, and them kind of things.
So this is quite natural within the culture in which we live. This is normalized within programs people watch on TV. And so why wouldn't it be something that people, unless people are told, no, this is not appropriate, where would they find out that this is not an appropriate thing to do?
No, but what?
Is it assumed that this is not appropriate?
No, but what I'm saying is that, okay, fine, I'm not even saying that those things don't exist. Some brothers don't have randy deviant fetishes and all them kind of things. I'm not saying that doesn't exist. I'm saying that someone actually went and did that in a Muslim matrimonial event.
Yeah, it happened.
His jaws should have been spinning, bro. You can't say that. How do you say that for another believing woman, bro?
Yeah.
That's disgusting.
But the thing is, look,
you're saying that we shouldn't be surprised by that.
I'm not saying we shouldn't be. We should always be surprised by that. But anything which is behavior which displeases Allah, this should be an issue of surprise. And like this is like we've almost failed as a community to deal with this. But the thing is, how is it that young man, beard, Muslim family, prays 5 times a day, why is it that is the way he feels that he should communicate with with girls?
Okay, let's not even go into pornography, bro. There's so many lighter versions of that which can make you communicate that's how a relationship should be. That's how intimacy should manifest. Right. You don't even have to go into the deep pornography of it. It's around us, from advertising to marketing to popular sports, wherever it may be. Wherever it is, it's everywhere. If you need a refill. Wow. I don't. I'm just.
Well, I'm shocked that you're shocked.
No, I'm shocked. I'm shocked that a practicing brother that could do such a thing.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that randy, deviant fetishes don't exist. That's been entirely shaped and molded around ideas and implementations that are not from our tradition and our religion.
Yes.
I accept that.
Yes.
I accept that can happen to the best of men, right? Because we are a product of our societies.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that someone had the fortitude to go and think that was acceptable in a matrimonial event. That's what's shocking me. Not that he had those views. It's that he voiced those views.
But do you think, yeah, and as it's not, so the boy does this, do you think that boy who asked that is asked that so often that everybody said no?
No,
or
yeah.
Do you think some girls would have said, actually, yeah, I'll send you a picture?
Yeah, that's why.
Because the reality is that
I guess
our
so,
young
man.
children
It's
are growing
horrible,
up
man. It's
in an
just-
environment where these things are so normalized that when somebody does it and responds in that way, they don't blink. They don't blink. They think this is normal. Normalized. The reality is what you said before is that we're products of our society, and I think sometimes we don't acknowledge that often enough.
No, we
All
are.
of us are.
No, we are.
All of us are.
I don't care how we.
We're shaped by that. The way we drive on the streets, yeah. The way we, like, for example, somebody could be very like, yeah, I'll let people go. After a while, you're within a system which says actually you don't let people go. You need to get to where you need to get to.
I have a famous line where when people do that.
Yeah.
Go play Good Samaritan on your own time. But I was very compassionate on the roads before. That's mad how you just use that
and
example.
You change that. You're changed based upon the reality which you're in.
That's true, bro.
Yeah, the operating culture in a society has an impact on us, and sometimes we don't acknowledge that. Yeah, and we need to acknowledge that much more. Yeah, how is the society shaping us, either good or bad? Yeah, and I think we need to ask ourselves these questions in a much more clearer way. But the thing is, the reality is, if our children are growing up without a clear understanding or the demarcation lines of how do you behave in different contexts, within an Islamic understanding, how do children know that? They don't know that unless we either model that behavior, or we tell our children this is how we behave. Yeah. Now imagine a generation of children who are growing up on pornography, now engaging in marital relationships. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of situations come to the ulama or to the imams or to Muslim counselors. The boy has been watching pornography for years. Now in a marital relationship, he's no longer satisfied because that one woman is no longer giving him the satisfaction.
Because he's got access to hundreds.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is vanilla.
Absolutely.
So the issue is that we need to start thinking about that. And there's organizations out there now helping brothers and even sisters trying to escape pornography addiction. It's becoming a bigger issue. So I think what we're going to say is that, and we don't blame young people. We failed our young people. We failed them. Yeah? And we need to do much more in educating them about what we believe in as Muslims. But we need to model that, and we need to bring to light to them how do we engage in this reality rather than taking from the society in which we live and taking the values of society in which we live. If we're Muslims, how do we embody the values of Islam? Because Islam speaks to all of these issues. How you engage in the bedroom, how you engage pre-marriage with your wife. Yeah. And I think we need to really think about how the solutions that we provide in our community around these issues.
My next question would be LGBTQ alliances, right? I know this is an area of discussion which gets very heated online, especially towards North America and the States, but where those issues appear to be more apparent. But it's not unheard of in some ISOCs and some universities in the UK where, because the LGBTQ society or lobby are anti-Islamophobia, are anti-racism, are anti-prevent, Muslims are sometimes put in a position where, kind of like we scratch yours, you scratch ours. Also, the fact that, a lot of the anti-Islamophobia and anti-racism activism is kind of dominated and led by the liberal left or the left, and the left who are also the biggest proponents and advocates of the LGBTQ. So what advice would you give to Muslims who find themselves in a difficult... So two things I'm asking you. What's your advice to those who find themselves in that difficult situation? where they're having to be made as well. So for example, as an ISOC, you've been approached by your LGBTQ society or something of that persuasion, and they say, hey guys, we're anti-prevent, we're anti-racism, we're anti-Islamophobia. What are you saying? Are you anti-LGBTQ as well? And will you raise the flags and do these kind of things? So those who are in the difficult situation, and those who think it's okay, and if it is okay, what circumstances can it ever be okay to ally yourselves with the LGBTQ groups, societies, lobbies, figures?
See, in origin, the Islamic principle is that you can as long as you agree upon a particular issue, a value which Islam agrees upon, you can have an alliance with non-Muslims on that issue, like Hilf al-Fudur, for example, where an issue arose that was in line with the values of Islam that Prophet subscribed to, and that was absolutely fine. But we also need to recognize that what are the potential consequences of alliances and what messages it send to our community. So, for example, the Stop the War movement, over since the Iraq War onwards, that almost opened a road, a way in which young Muslims got involved in activism through that, and they adopted
until Syria happened.
Yeah,
and then them kind of contradictions came out, and then.
But even then, we still see a big movement of Muslims who are still supportive of the left.
Of course, absolutely.
And once you, for example, and the thing is that if, for example, somebody from the LGBT community says, "Look, I'm supportive of you about Islamophobia, around prevent
Palestine,
all of these issues. I'm really supportive of all these issues." Now, if that relationship becomes quid pro quo, like Trump would say, if that becomes like you give me something and I'll if we give you something, you give us something back in return, then that's a problem. Because imagine if another society came to the Islamic society and said, "Look, we believe in all these things. We'll support you in that, as long as you, for example, support us, because we want to extend the opening hours of the bar, and we want to, it closes at 11, but we've been told that if we get a widespread support from communities across the board, then we can have it open until 1. Now, even though they're saying we're going to support you in your
or we have
issues,
support. No, we will. We have supported you.
You've got to support us now, and we say no. We have to politely refuse. We've got certain values and some red lines that we can't cross. And if that alliance involves us supporting you in an action which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala considers a sin, then we can't do that. It's almost like, imagine if the meat-eating society were to ask the vegetarian society to support them in their call for meat across the campus. Now, there would never be that the meat society would not say to the vegetarian society, "You have to do this." It would be unreasonable to expect them to go against their values.
So why do they do it then? Why are Islamic societies and Muslim groups and activists and institutions approached by pro-LGBTQ groups and lobbies? Why, if it's a case of meat love carnivores and vegans, then why are they approached, and why are some Muslims succumbing to it?
Because the fact is, I think that the understanding of activism hasn't been set from the correct perspective. Their rules of engagement are not clear from the outset. If they would say to this group, "Okay, look, we support you. We can work together. We understand you as human beings. We recognize that we can work together on a whole host of issues, but we have some red lines." Just like we don't expect you to come to our dawah store and take part in our dawah to non-Muslims because you don't believe in our religious perspectives. Similarly, we can't accept relationships that fall outside of marriage between a man and a woman.
How would you counter with one of the argumentations that's come from the States by a couple of prominent du'at and Islamic thinkers or Muslim thinkers, is that, hey, fighting for the rights and the equality of people to have these type of family setups or relationships under a secular law is not the same as endorsing or agreeing with their particular lifestyle or their sexual choices. That just because as Muslims we are advocating for them to have equal rights or to live safely and freely without harm or not to be discriminated towards, is not the same as us saying that those kind of relationships are allowed. We can say that they're abhorrent, they're un-Islamic, it's haram, it's sinful, all those things, but we can still fight and advocate for their equality, for their rights, and for them not to be discriminated.
I think the question is that rather than going to the intricacies of that particular argument, I would say, take a step back and say, what message does that send to young Muslims? Yeah, and what potentially could that create in terms of, we're all living in a society where there's confusion amongst young Muslims about attractions. Yeah, now throwing that into the mix, how is that going to add to the confusion amongst young Muslims around these issues? Yeah, and if you can say that it's going to create no confusion whatsoever because we've given all those caveats, yeah. And we made it very clear that we don't accept relationships outside of marriage outside of a relationship between a man and a woman in marriage. Then go ahead with that, yeah. But I strongly believe that it will open up a doorway for young Muslims to start to say, to look upon people from different backgrounds, say, okay, they're such nice people, then associate with them, and then say, actually, what's wrong with being like that? Yeah, that proximity builds sympathy, which inevitably can shift into something that goes beyond what you envisioned in the beginning. That's like, for example, the way idol worshipping started. Idol worshipping started by a sincere attempt
to renovate noble men.
And then over time that got changed. The reality is, I think the context is that a few generations down the line, most of the children of those from Muslim families will no longer be Muslim.
That's scary.
Because the reality is, the longer a generation exists in any society, those generations will more likely adopt the values of the host culture, a dominant culture around them. Yeah, unless we fight for our future generations. That's what we're fighting, not just for our children, but for their children's children. And we just think about the long term, the long view. Yeah, there's lots of Muslims in different parts of the world who, like Boris Johnson's grandfather was Muslim.
Ottoman Turk.
Yeah, who is he now? He's somebody who actually discriminates against women who practice Islam. So if that is possible within just 2 generations, what is the future for our couple of generations down the line? So sometimes people say, look, you're too defensive about these things. No. The issue is that the Iman of our children and their children is something that is worth being a bit more over defensive about than being lax and allowing that doorway to open where future generations will come and say, look, yeah, I think my father's father was Muslim. I like to occasionally have biryani, and that's my connection to my culture.
Wow.
Yeah. Reality is that how can it be that we invest so much time in the educational attainment of our children? Mm-hmm. I'll give you an example. Yeah, I was observing a conversation. Somebody in a group was saying, we moved into this area. Yeah, what is the best school in the area? What are the good schools? So they give examples. Why are these the good schools? All the reasons people gave were around, the educational standards are really good. They're this, they're that. The pastoral care is really good. Nobody said, how did that school talk about SRE? How did it talk about LGBT? Do they have provision for children to pray? Yeah, are they accepting of Muslims to exhibit their faith in a way which reflects who they are? None of those were even discussions within that group, and I really felt sad because if we raise really.
Were you on that group?
I was in that group. Yeah.
And did you raise?
No, the social media discussions do not help in fostering change. That somebody says, for example, I'm taking my mother out tomorrow for Mother's Day. Somebody says, oh no, that's haram. Yeah,
you're just going to entrench them further, aren't you?
You can't engage in a conversation around that when everybody's of a particular mind. So what I'm saying is that
it's like the voting debate, isn't it?
Yeah, we leave that to the side. But what I'm saying is that the issue is that we could have in future very, very good, able doctors who are just not Muslim. Now, how can we say that we've achieved success when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala defines success as being
100%.
Somebody who raises children who are who are mindful of their reason for existence, being to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to save our children from the hellfire.
Who is Stonewall, or what is Stonewall?
So Stonewall is the main lobby for LGBT people. So they promote the rights of LGBT people. They obviously they make tens of millions of pounds every year. They're a massive lobby, and so they represent the interests of LGBT people across workplaces with their Stonewall Index. So they're trying to make like workplaces more better for LGBT people. They do training. They lobby government. They do research research.
How long have they been around? Like
for at least a few decades.
Wow.
They're named after the Stonewall riots. You know, so
Okay,
where in America people push back against the mistreatment of LGBT people. But the issue is that they any lobby group does not achieve what they achieve in isolation of societal shifts.
Of course.
You know, look at all the Hollywood movies the Hollywood movies have been more impactful than lobby groups in shifting attitudes around LGBT people. Yeah, much more than the lobby groups. Because culture shifts opinion in a way that other things don't. Yeah, you imagine a young Muslim who has a connection they watch a soap opera or like a drama series, and their connection to their character is very strong because I really identify with that character. That character comes out as LGBT. Now imagine how does that emotional connection pan out between I believe this is wrong to my favorite character is this. Yeah. So those cultural perspectives shift opinion in a way that other things don't. The LGBT lobby just takes that shift in society and plays on it and advances their case. But even look at what the LGBT lobby at the moment. There's a big schism between
trans.
Yeah, trans has created a big rift amongst lots of women who identify as lesbian.
Yeah, you got next man who came number one in the swimming competition.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Absolutely. So this is creating rifts within those communities, and they're saying that the trans issue has taken things too far.
Now why are you lot excluding trans for? What's wrong with you lot? Leave them be, man.
But the thing is that the reality is that with this whole argument is that there's a look. The biology is. It's not all about biology, but obviously biology is really real, and it's more than just about sexual parts. It's about the way that there's a marked difference between the way male and female behave in real life. Yeah, there is aspects of brain activity, there's aspect of human behavior.
Where did this all stem? Where did all this stem from, bro? Like
this stems from a liberal perspective. The state should afford you the right to be whatever you want to be.
The Peter Thatcher kind of mindset. You know, where did this come from? Do they really want to destroy the family unit?
Absolutely. They believe they believe that the family they co-opted they worked with feminists and others to say that we need to destroy the patriarchy. Family units
oppressive
structures. Family units, faith are all our enemies. We've got to break all those institutions to allow us to live a life where we can live as accepted people in society. And I completely understand their perspective. If you identified as LGBT, you'd want to live in a society where all the institutions and the cultural space was open to you living the life that you want to live, isn't it? So it's like saying, I sometimes see Muslim parents saying, Stonewall, why are they doing this? No, the issue is it's almost asking,
of course they're going to do it.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And sometimes we spend too much time almost navel gazing. Yeah, why are they doing this? Why that takes away the energy we can use in actually either opposing some of these agendas if we can, or at least educating our community about what we believe in and why we believe what we believe. And I say to parents sometimes, don't all these stories about trans and stuff. They're diversions. Yeah, they're all just another step in that same story. And by you sharing them, sometimes it actually creates a big. Almost an apathy amongst Muslims, because the more you see these powerful lobbies creating change around you, you think I can't do anything about it.
Start becoming despondent.
Yeah. And so I say to parents, don't share this.
Okay.
Yeah? Just really be positive about things. Because the reality is that at the end of the day, we have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on our side.
100%.
Yeah? And so for people who have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on their side, anything is possible. Yeah. Forget about lobbies, forget about multi-million pound fundraising campaigns that they've got. Forget about all of that. Yeah, these are all smoke and mirrors. Yeah, the reality is, if we live by Islam and we work in line with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded us to do, yeah, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give us anything we want. Our dua will have a special significance in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when it will be accepted. Yeah, and even then, just the fact that we're striving in relation to our purpose in life and then our worship and obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will mean that our life is a life worth living.
So, usually I start with quick fire questions. You notice I didn't do that with you.
Yeah.
That's because I'm going to close with some quick fire statements that I want you to make. You're going to have 1 minute to address the following audiences.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm timing you. It'll be in front of you. Can you please, in 1 minute, give some concluding advice to Muslim parents who could potentially face these problems with their children?
One thing is, make sure you love your child. Yeah, that means understanding. That means kissing your child, hugging your child. That means spending quality time with your child. Yeah, that means telling your child, "I love you." Even though in our culture that's almost taboo, especially fathers. Yeah?
100%.
Hug your daughters, hug your sons. Tell them you love them, kiss them, spend quality time with them. Yeah, these things will build a strong relationship with them, so that you'll be able to build connection. Children who don't have that fatherly love will look for fatherly love elsewhere, in relationships, in radical lifestyle choices. So really, one of the main things, love your children. Also, live your values. Yeah, if you want your children to live your values but you don't live them, then really it's very difficult. Also, make sure you build your children's foundation not on rituals of Islam, but why are we Muslim? Why do we believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Why is the Quran the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Build it upon some firm foundations.
I like it. What would your 1 minute advice be to Muslim brothers and sisters, young and old, who are having these inclinations, who are being tempted to act upon these inclinations? What would your advice be to those who are having those feelings, whether it's towards the same gender, whether it's so they feel that they are not the right gender? What would your advice be to them?
I'd say, look, think about these things. Yeah, feelings are temporary. They don't define who you are. You are not your feelings. They don't define who you are as a person. Yeah, or as a Muslim. The feelings will change from time to time. Yeah, people are tested in different ways by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. See that as a test. Yeah, just realize, don't make any life-changing decisions that you can't change later on. Yeah, but recognize your purpose in life. Recognize, why did Allah create us in the first place? Yeah, and have patience. Make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Build your personal connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by asking Him in dua. Sometimes we don't talk about dua enough. Dua is a means by which you can ask Allah for things and for strength, for the ability to overcome difficulties. Ask Allah anything for strength and for the strength of your Eman. Attach yourself to people who are good Muslims, yeah, and attach yourself to work that is a positive way of you engaging in life in the society.
And the last piece of this is not even advice, this is rather a message. What would your message be to the LGBTQ lobby who feel that Muslims are not doing enough to make their children understand or appreciate or acknowledge their way of life, their sexual lifestyle choices, how they identify with themselves, whether they see themselves as neutral allies or whether they see themselves as Muslims and practicing Muslims as an obstacle to their world order, their world view? What would your message be to those people?
I say, look, we've got no antagonism towards you as a community. We don't want to destroy you as a community. We work in environments where we have people from different backgrounds who live and work together. That's not a problem. But I think stop evangelizing in the Muslim community, stop imposing your values upon us, and stop representing your values as almost a neutral intervention in our community. Let us live our values and let you live your values. Like there's a verse in the Quran, an ayah in the Quran where Allah subhanahu in Surah Kafirun, yeah, lakum dinukum waliya din, you know, you to your deen and us to ours, you to your way of life and us to ours. We don't need to necessarily impose our values on you, and you don't need to impose your values on us. Where we can work together on an issue, maybe we can in the future, but there shouldn't be an expectation that we have to accept your way of life, just like we don't expect you to adopt our way of life. Yeah, and I think really just think about about what's best for society in terms of engagement, and what are you doing in terms of imposing your values on schools and on children.
Yusuf, my dear brother, Jazakumullah khairan. I thoroughly enjoyed today's podcast. There's a few things I want to say about yourself.
Oh, please don't.
No, honestly, and the work that you do. My dear brother, I know that the work that you're doing is sometimes it's a very lonely place. I mean, we were together just about 2-3 weeks ago when we went to that Uyghur cafe, which I'll never forget.
You're never going to play that down, is it?
No, but you know, we were driving about in East, and you know, when you look at projects, like I would regard 5 Pillars as an organisation to be bigger than SRE.
Absolutely.
And there are many organisations that are bigger than 5 Pillars. And I guess in certain lines of work and da'wah and activism, it can get really, really, really lonely. Whether that's in terms of funding, whether that's in terms of meaningful engagement, whether that means in terms of platform and, you know, Muslim institutions and so forth coming together, giving the support beyond just lip service. I just want to say, I think you're doing a fantastic job, bro. And I think that you are truly an exemplary person who is truly committed to a cause which will no doubt, and has already, based on this conversation, has already affected our children and will no doubt affect the future of our children's Eman. And brothers and sisters, whether this podcast is released in Ramadan or straight after Ramadan, I want you all to go to sreislamic.org and parentalguidance.support. Is there a donation link on SRE Islamic's website?
Yes.
I want you all to give generously. I want you all to, in fact, if you were a donor of 5 Pillars, I'm even happy for you to stop donating to us and start donating to SRE Islamic.
I said don't do that.
No, but I'm happy to do that, because there's certain causes, bro, that, you know, quite frankly, I think it would be better invested, right? And, you know, if you love the work of 5 Pillars, you follow myself, Roshan, and the projects and the work that we've been doing for the past 9 years, wallahi, you need to be supporting SRE Islamic and the work brother Yusuf Patel does. I know his journey, and I know the work that he's been doing is very lonely. And let me tell you something, when times and environments get lonely, brothers and sisters, you come close to quitting. It happens. Shaitan comes to you. Have you ever come close to just quitting and just giving up?
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
I think the reality is, look, I speak to parents, yeah, and I see what they're going through, and that anything I can do just to support them in a small way. And actually, one thing I really say is that I really feel the dua of people. Yeah, the reality is that I'm an imperfect person. I'm an imperfect parent. There's so much things I can do better in my own life, but I feel the dua of people. You know, it's like when someone's asleep and other people that you've helped are making dua for you. I feel that impact of that dua, and that's what sustains me. Yeah?
Alhamdulillah,
that's what I see. People, strangers, making dua for me. Someone says, "Look, I heard what you did. I made dua for you," and I think, subhanallah, that is priceless. That care and that love. And that support, I think that's what really keeps me going. Because I recognise that it's that dua, inshallah, that will be something that will help me in this dunya and in the akhirah. And I ask anybody, please continue to make dua for me and for my strength and for my istiqamah upon this path, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair, my dear brother. Brothers and sisters and friends, and of course, no doubt this episode's going to have some foes tuning in as well. If you enjoyed this podcast and you happen to be from Stonewall as well, subscribe to our 5 Pillars YouTube channel. You can find all our podcasts. I have taken down that vlog that I did outside Lot's Cave. We have given back that £3,000 grant that you all lobbied for us to get, and a donor paid for it like this, alhamdulillah. But anyway, subscribe to the 5 Pillars YouTube channel. You can find us on all the podcast platforms. Like this video, share this video, leave a comment, and until next time, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Blood Brothers Podcast, a Five Pillars production.